All right. Hey, Chirag. How's it going, man?
Hey, Sinead, good.
All right, let's jump right in. We got a packed agenda for today's show.
Sure do.
Yeah, let's jump in, man. So I'm gonna start us off with a quote, and this was from Melissa Kirsch, and she's reflecting on I think a phenomena that we can all relate to. That are we over curating our life? And in fact, the quote is: "Does curating every detail make us happier, or does it take something vital away from our experience?" And you and I were talking about it, and like, there's so much information, there's so much data out there, there's so much that we can analyze to try to make sure we make good decisions. And at some point, it's a law of diminishing returns, and we get frustrated and we're like, all right, I need to buy a roll of tape from Amazon, and I've just spent 45 minutes down a rabbit hole and I still haven't bought a roll of tape.
Right.
Should I buy the 3 pack? Should I buy the 1 pack? Do I need double sided? What if it's a variety pack that has double sided included? And I'll need that in, like, it's insane, right? And so I think that's one of the topics that we wanted to touch on today is, just, are we really living better, happier, healthier lives given that we're trying to, curate all this data to optimize our decision-making process. So yeah, I know we're going to touch on a lot of this, but let me throw it over to you and get you to, share what you're thinking here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we probably all experience it, right, in this modern world where we have access to so much information. It's just been a natural progression over the course of the past, 20 years, right, where we've had access to the internet, we've had Amazon reviews, and we've had, all the information of the world at our fingertips. And I almost think we don't even know that it's happened until we take a step back and realize that we're doing this on a daily basis, on every aspect of our lives, that we're researching the hell out of every little minute detail of our lives. And the question has to be asked, is it a good use of our time, right? And it goes to a lot of different themes about, control and spontaneity, decision overload, which we're gonna get into all this stuff. But and then I think we will touch on something called beta mode, which I think will be a nice challenge for our listeners.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. So, I mean, what was it? Do you have a recent story that, I mean, I know I have one, share a recent example where you kind of decided to, roll the dice and not over curate every little aspect of it? Like, what happened, and, like, how did it feel? And yeah, why don't you like share something on that?
Sure. Yeah. The family and I took a trip over the summer to France and to England. And I mean, just one aspect of my personality is when, not in a lot of parts of my life, but when it comes to travel, I am a complete control freak. I like to plan out every day and literally every minute of every day. And, my wife, Kanika, will attest to this fact because she's traveled with me for, I don't know, 20 years. But yeah, so that's something that there's this fear I have of being somewhere and not being able to experience everything I could possibly experience. So when we went on this trip over the summer, I tried to let go of that a little bit. I tried not to plan out every single minute because we were traveling with kids, different ages. I think I wanted to leave some time, some breathing room, and also some time for delight and, just letting the kids explore or even, letting them dictate what we could do. So it wasn't a lot, I'll admit, but I tried to build it in there to have some free time where we weren't, always running to the next place. So I think even that little bit that I gave, helped me to kind of uh, not be so over prepared for everything. How about you?
And
Any recent examples?
yeah,
Sorry, good.
I definitely have them, but just a quick follow-up on that, I'm curious.
Yep.
So, like, obviously you let go a little bit. Your kids had some spontaneity, and the family had some spontaneous activities, and you look back on it and you know, look at the experiences you had that followed the agenda and itinerary versus those that were a bit more spontaneous. Did you see any difference in those experiences? Do the kids or the family remember those experiences any differently?
Yeah, I mean, what one thing is we were in Paris right after the Olympics. So literally the closing ceremonies happened. I think we were there just a few days later, or maybe even like a day or two later. So a lot of the Olympic stuff was still there. So we hadn't really planned on any kind of Olympic activities, but you know, we really liked the fact that, all the venues were still there. So, the kids were really curious to see what all the venues look like. They wanted to see the Olympic rings on the Eiffel Tower, and like the Paralympics logo on the Arc de Triomphe and all that kind of stuff. So we allowed time for that, and the kids really remember that fondly. So, we did go to a couple of the venues. We looked at some of the venues from like the top of the Eiffel Tower, which was phenomenal. So that kind of stuff, I think the kids really did enjoy. So yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great, man. I mean, my example is a little bit more, I guess, occurs with a little bit more frequency, which is just going out to dinner with some friends, and just the whole process of figuring out a restaurant and reading reviews, and trying to figure out whether there's special dietary restrictions and whether the restaurant's going to accommodate those restrictions or not, and just kind of like that entire process of picking a place for dinner. And I remember reading, some of the articles related to how much we over curate our lives, and personally trying to reduce the amount of over curation. And it was getting to that part of the dinner with our friends after, we had had our meal, and it was time to decide whether we wanted dessert or not. And, like, you could totally wait for the restaurant to bring your dessert menus, or you could hop on your phone and,
Yeah.
start Googling to say, hey, what is, what's the dessert menus? And I started sharing about the story of how much we over curate our lives and how we've taken away some of the spontaneity in life, and kind of guilted everybody into holding on to looking at the dessert menus online, and we just kind of winged it. And it was a topic of the it ended up being a very interesting dinner topic of how much we over curate our lives. And before we knew it, like, this server was back, and she had brought some dessert menus, and we were able to look at the dessert menu and make our decision, pretty quickly, and get surprised by what was on the menu, as opposed to, like, the server shows up and we're ready to order. So anyhow, there was something nice about the spontaneity of, just waiting for the menu to see what was on the dessert menu and all that. And
Yeah.
it also led to some interesting dinner conversations about how much we do over curate our lives, and to try to find more moments of spontaneity in life to introduce that kind of, I don't know, newness or novelty of waiting, delaying your gratification of information, and letting life happen a little bit around you more spontaneously.
Yeah, that's great. Almost like a little mini challenge. Just that little bit of time at the end, until from the end of dinner until you get the dessert menu.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and we'll touch on more of that later. But, it's there's something to it, right? Like, because it allows you to stay in the moment for the conversation, not have to necessarily take a break from maybe something that you're talking about to, pop open a phone, and then you'll get distracted by a text message or an alert, and next thing
Yeah.
you know, you're down a rabbit hole, and you've missed a connection with your friends that you're or family that you're having dinner with. So, yeah, small one, but I think certainly very powerful in terms of, hey, let's just take a break from the over curation, be in the moment, and not worry about what's on the menu. And when the time comes, you'll make the right choice. It's dessert after
Yeah.
all. You can't go wrong.
Right, exactly. One other thing I'll add is, in terms of wanting to look things up. So I've noticed this trend with my son, my oldest son, who's 12 and has a cell phone, and I can't put the blame on him fully. I do this too, and he probably picked up some cues from me as well. Is that whenever you have a thought, or you have a question, or there's something that you can't remember, or there's some factoid that you're curious about, your immediate inclination is not to just let think about it for a minute, but it's immediately to reach for your phone and Google it, right? I pride myself on my Google skills, which now is probably becoming obsolete. But and I think when Google first came out, or search engines in general first came out, it's a valuable skill to have. But I think it made it so that we became so over reliant on it. So the trend I notice is whenever my son has a thought or a question, immediate instinct is to go reach for the phone, Google it. And I have to tell him to, fight that urge, because what is that doing to our attention span and to our kind of, brains, that the second we need to know the information, we have to have it. We can't what's the word? Just live with it even for a second. We have to know right away. And, that kind of goes towards the same theme of over curating where we just want to research, 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 or we need to know that information right away. And it all goes back to the fact that we have all this information at our fingertips. And the question is, how much is too much?
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, I look for examples during like our daily life to do mental math at times. Like the simple things of like, okay, if we're at a store and we're buying something and it's like a 15% discount, like just to keep my own head sharp of like, hey, I don't want to get dull on my ability
Yeah.
to, just do quick math in my head because I'm out of practice and I literally would whip out my phone and type in a very basic addition or subtraction calculation on my phone as opposed to challenging myself to make sure I'm staying sharp and being able to think critically and analytically, throughout the day. And I think that's the like very similar example to what you're saying of like, we have to let our brains marinate and sit on ideas so that we can build those synapses in our neurological system and recall memories or establish new memories. And if we're always quick to grab the phone and validate a thought or like get an instant idea, like we don't need to have that skill and it could atrophy over time. And maybe that's what's going to happen in the world of AI, but I guess you and I are at least going to go down fighting.
For sure. Yeah. Why,
So,
why do you think, yeah, why do you think we're so hooked on that kind of control and planning?
oh my God, right? What a great question, man. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of dimensions to it. I would say at least one dimension is just we put such a premium on our time, and that when we do have events and activities that we choose to spend our time towards, we want to make sure that they're fruitful and that we maximize the value of that time. And I feel like, you know, maybe we're not really doing the right ROI analysis to say, all right, is it really worth 5 hours of Google searches and review reading and TripAdvisor and Yelp feedback to make all these decisions versus just kind of winging it and being more spontaneous. But I feel like that's how, at least in my head, I justify all of my research time because I want to make sure that the time that I do have, for the activity, the event coming up, we make the best and maximize the value of all that time together. So one is definitely just the premium that we put on our time. I think that's why we want to make sure that we make the most of it.
Yeah. I mean, along those lines, right? I mean, yeah, we want to maximize, and I think we're hardwired for that in a certain way, right? But we were hardwired for that traditionally with small amounts of data, right? A recommendation from a friend, or even a newspaper review, right? Where it's small amounts of data. It's not the fire hose of information that we have now, where you go online, you search for a restaurant, and you can pull up 1,000 reviews, and that I think is the difference. It's the scale, right? Where, yeah, of course, we want to maximize and make the best use of our time, but the scale of information that we have is just so different than what it was in the past, and that scale changed, dramatically in the past 20 years. And that's, I think, the major difference. With the introduction of social media, everyone has an opinion, obviously. And because everyone has an opinion, they share it online. And now we have all this information about every thought that everyone's ever had. And it's just too much.
Yeah. No, and then and that it and it if that essentially turns into an intellectual exercise then because it's like, all right, I'm gonna figure out all this information that's out there. I'm gonna, analyze it, distill it down, and that's gonna make sure that I make the right choice. And it becomes just this like intellectual exercise of like, well, like, I know how to curate this information and analyze it in a way that nobody else does. And so, I'm gonna be the best at this. And so this is what I need to do. And
Mhm.
so I think, like we've you get hooked on that addict, you just get hooked on that, kind of satisfaction of knowing you made a good choice. Cause at the end, you're going to look back and you're going to say like, oh, was that a good experience? And, was that a good family vacation that we took? And was that a good dinner experience that we had? And, if I would have found out this other piece of data, maybe we could have had this other experience and that experience. And I don't know. To me, like everything you and I just talk about, it really comes down to mindset, doesn't it? Like if we're going to the Stoic principles, whether it's mindfulness or whether it's amor fati, like it doesn't matter how much we really over curate if we're not going to have the mindset of like, yeah, that was a good experience, and have a positive disposition and look at the positive side of things, and, not be so self-critical of ourselves. Like, there is no amount of research that's going to adjust for that. It's your mindset, it's your disposition. And so I guess my key point is, like, look at some Stoic principles, look at your mindset, look at your disposition and the way that you're navigating life's uncertainties. And, if you take a principle like amor fati and embracing, hey, it's supposed to happen this way, and, not something that you need to, force control over or resist, but rather accept, then maybe you enjoy life a little bit more, as opposed to trying to just constantly get that key insight or key piece of data, access to that key piece of data that you think is going to help you make an optimal decision.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and I think it goes to present-mindedness too, right? And this is not only a concept in Stoicism, but also in a lot of Eastern religions, especially Buddhism, which is being present. And uh, I think if we were more present, then we could make the best. Like we're talking about we're talking about the best experience, but what does that really mean, right? That is it is the alternate to that best experience, is it 95% of what what the best experience is? Is it 80%? And do those fractions even matter, right? Like, if there's a good enough experience, but you're present and you fully, truly enjoy it, isn't that enough, right? Or are you thinking about the extra 20% more enjoyment you could have had? Like, what are we, why are we on this hamster wheel of constantly having to have the best experience whereas you just take what comes to you, right? But you enjoy it fully, and you're in the present, you enjoy that moment, and then you don't really have to worry about all that other stuff, right?
I have to kind of maybe make a confession on this. And,
Hmm.
this relates to just the point that you're raising of, like, how much analysis is so much analysis that now you've gone beyond a point where there's going to ever be any joy from this experience. And I've done that with vacations at time, man, where I'm like looking for the perfect vacation at the perfect price point, at the perfect destination for the perfect mix of family and individual time. And it's like I've spent hours and days and weeks, and I get to the point where I've spent so much time trying to make this perfect decision that doesn't exist. I don't even want to go on vacation anymore. Like, there
Hmm.
is no trip, after reading all the TripAdvisor reviews and finding horrible things about every resort in the whole country. Like,
Yeah.
forget it, guys. Like, it sucks. Like, this is over. We're not going. Like, the vacation's done. And it's a very slippery slope to get to that point where you get so much decision fatigue with all the information, like you were saying, that's available out there. You could really ruin the entire experience before you even have it, just through over curating.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you follow that thread of over curation and all that research, what's the natural progression of that? And it's an interesting question, because now with AI, I'm finding myself doing less research in a way, because I've switched from using Google or any traditional search engine to using an AI search engine. I use Perplexity pretty much on a regular basis, and I have been for the past, and we're talking about recently, but past few weeks. And I found myself, instead of searching for something on Google and then going to the first 5 links and trying to find what I need, I kind of trust the AI Perplexity to do that research for me and then give me an answer. We can get into the kind of trust of AI, like, how much do I trust the AI? But it's an interesting point, right? That you can now, the next natural step almost takes us backwards, where we do less research because we're letting an AI do the research for us.
Yeah, I think it's finding the signal in the noise. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like, when we're doing Google searches, there's a bunch of noise, there's a bunch of information. We're trying to put all that information into our brain and make a decision. Now we're leveraging AI to try to find the key nuggets, the key insights, curate all that information for us, and then point us to, let's say, a more refined or a more, filtered and enriched set of data to help us to make our decisions. Or in even some cases, just the AI will make the decision for us, and we don't even have to worry about it. We won't even question it. Like, we'll just say, oh yeah, right. Like, that is my brain because those, algorithms are trained off of decisions I've historically made and which ones I've liked and which ones I haven't liked. And well, it knows what I want better than I know what I want. So I have to, yeah, I have to make the most of it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that point, but
Maybe. I mean, that itself is a slippery slope, right? Of how much to trust an algorithm. But yeah, that's interesting.
I wonder how much like decision fatigue is going to play a role in our embrace of AI to help us with, decision making, like that's certainly an area that I feel at times at the end of a day, like I don't even want to talk to anybody because I've had to make a bunch of decisions at work, had to make a bunch of decisions at the family. And it's like, oh, I got to now figure out what I want to make for dinner, what the family wants for dinner. I'm like, no, I've just had enough. Like, I don't want to make any more
Right.
decisions like that. So great. I'm going to turn to the AI and let the AI make that decision for me because I'm tired. I don't want to make any more decisions. And so, yeah, I mean, look, there's a happy medium there for sure. And I think we're in the early stages of figuring out how and where we're going to defer to the AI from a decision making perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a symptom of our modern life, right? Where we do have decision fatigue because there's so many aspects of our life that are, I don't know, different than they were 50 years ago, right? We all have families, but we also have jobs. We have all this other stuff on the internet, and so much going on that we're constantly making decisions every day, and there's just so many choices. And one other thing I want to cover is the quality of those of that research, right? Where uh, because there are all these kind of content farms and even AI generated content on the internet, you have to ask what the quality of the research that you're doing, or is it even of high quality, or is it the more you research, are you just propagating garbage information, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think, it's just like the law of diminishing returns, like we're just at some point, you just get to the point where it's like, there's no point that, and you just need to make a decision and move on. And, one of the rubrics I've used in my own personal life is, and I think Bezos maybe had, kind of coined this or not, but, first filter is deciding whether the decision is reversible or irreversible. And if it's a reversible, if it's something that, is not too difficult, they're pretty easy to undo based off the choice you make, like just make the choice and iterate and move on. If it's an irreversible decision, like once you step through that door, it's very hard to step back. The door behind you closes. Well, then, okay, like you have the right to take some time to make that decision, gather feedback, make sure you are making the right choice and, taking your time on this one. And so those that simple rubric, like, okay, versus, picking a show on Netflix or picking what meal to cook, for dinner that night, those are definitely reversible decisions, low impact on the quality of life relative to, all right, like I've got two or three competing job offers. Like those are irreversible decisions once you make a choice to like pick a new career or a new job that you're going to be embracing. Well, those you definitely want to take a little bit more time on than deciding what you want to have for dinner. So that's one simple rubric that I found helpful to expedite and reduce my decision fatigue is to just make decisions quicker that are reversible and then, save my critical decision making to those that are irreversible.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it was Bezos. But since we're talking taking advice from tech billionaires, how about, if we want to go back to the whole easing our burden of decision fatigue, we can look at people like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, and it's something as simple as their wardrobe choice, right? Where they intentionally removed that choice to ease the burden of decision fatigue. Because as a CEO of a company, you're making a million decisions a day. That's one less thing that you don't have to worry about. And it's simple. It sounds simple, but if you remove enough of those decision points from your life, then that eases that burden and you can focus on the more important, like you said, those irreversible decisions. You can focus on those and not really spend any of your mental energy on those reversible or, you could say unimportant decisions.
Yeah. And there's no reason we all couldn't take that advice and put it into practice this coming week and, like give it a shot. I mean, we've got I mean, we're recording this the day before election day. I mean, we all, I think, have had a certain level of decision fatigue. Even if you've made your choice, it's like the advertisements and kind of the social discussion that has ensued as a result of this election and the contentiousness of it. Like, this is a great time to introduce a challenge for everybody to say, all right, like, take a break, like, make some decisions earlier, bank some of your decisions that you need to make in a daily basis, and reduce that burden on yourself by doing it the night before. Pick your outfit out, make a meal plan for the week, pick out the shows or that you want to watch for that weekend. Like, do it all ahead of time and, get it out of the way, and so you don't have to think about it during the weeks. Maybe that's a good one for this week, given the added stress of the election and kind of all the coverage. And I'm sure people are going to be up late watching election coverage to see who the next president is and yada, yada. Well, all right, like, take a couple of decisions off of your plate for the week. Do it tonight, do it tomorrow, whenever this episode comes out. And hopefully that'll make you a little less stressed for the week. So there's your listener challenge for the week. Try to limit your
Yeah.
choices, make those decisions early, and reduce your risk of decision fatigue.
Yeah, it's a great one. I do want to talk about, a strategy that I've used that I think could be useful for other people as well. Let's take the example of, searching for a show, right? Where you go on Netflix, you go on Amazon Prime or whatever, like the million other streaming services we have now, and you try to look for a show, right? And you're at the mercy of the algorithm that the streaming service is using to target you for what it thinks you like, right? Or you could even go to an entertainment website and try to search for, the new shows or whatever. But I think it's like you said, it's a law of diminishing returns, right? Where the more research you do, the more decision fatigue you feel, or the more the choice overload that you have, that you can't make a decision. And we've all found ourselves in that situation where find yourself scrolling Netflix for half an hour and still haven't even started watching anything, right?
Yep.
So one strategy I've taken is to make note of when recommendations come up organically, right? Because we all have that experience. Um, we're in a conversation, someone recommends a show, and then maybe a couple days later, someone else recommends that same show, right? And it goes to the whole concept of the cream will rise to the top, right? Where you don't have to necessarily research everything. That if something is good enough or it relates to you enough, where if other people think you'll like something, you'll hear about it. And you know what? If you don't hear about it, then maybe it's not good enough, and maybe that is something you let go and you say like, all right, well, I'm not gonna, there's if you think about it, there's more content being made every minute than we could consume in 10 lifetimes, right? And that's just a battle you're going to lose, where you're not going to be able to consume all this content. And yeah, you will miss good stuff, but that's okay. Learn to let go. If something is good enough, yeah, I'll give an example. Succession. I didn't watch Succession until like the fourth season because I had gotten to that point where I was just like, I can't watch everything. Like I'm recommended millions of shows on a regular basis, and I just can't keep up with everything. I have kids, I have a job, I have all this other stuff I want to do. I can't just sit and watch TV all day. And even if I did, I still wouldn't be able to watch all the stuff that's recommended to me. So now after that, I started making note of recommendations that come my way that sound interesting that I think I'll like. And Succession is one of those where I kept hearing about it, and I kept hearing about it from different people that I trusted, and from very different people that, have different tastes. And at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I should check out Succession. And of course, it's an amazing show, one of the greatest all time. But yeah, this is one example where you let recommendations come to you organically. And I think that if you're able to let go and take that approach, I think you'll be a lot happier in the long run.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, your point is, I mean, what a great example, man. I mean, it ties together so many points that we talk about throughout the podcast of why social interactions are so important and so critical to combat loneliness. I mean, this is just another way in which we can, be more spontaneous and, live life a little bit more fulfilled through our own personal interactions with others. And yeah, I mean, those interactions are uh, arguably even more powerful than whatever AI is going to be able to tell us we want, because I don't know that our I mean, our beliefs and what we find interesting are going to continue to evolve based off of our interactions with the world around us. And so if we decide to cut off like physical human interaction and we limit ourselves to only curating digital content, right? I mean, there you go. Your AI is going to know you pretty damn well. But if we say, nope, like it's important to me to go see family, have social interactions, like those are areas that allow us to continue to grow and refine our preferences, our likes, our dislikes, and also allows, like what you're saying, decision making of how we're going to spend our dessert time or our entertainment time curated through personal recommendations as opposed to what we're seeing in a digital recommendation. So lots of those things tie back together. Like I think it's critical for us to make sure that we do continue to curate our lives through social interactions as opposed to only digital interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's also important, I think, to seek out that kind of surprise and spontaneity, right? I mean, there's an example in that article we brought up initially from Melissa Kirsch from the New York Times, where she talks about a surprise birthday party, and it's a perfect example, right? Because it's something you have zero control over that you don't even know about until it happens, and I mean, think about, I mean, if I'm sure most people have had at least one surprise party experience. I mean, think about that experience. Think about what you felt, and you walk into a room and suddenly all your closest friends and family are there. I mean, think about that delight, right? And try to bring that into other parts of your life. Like, it's okay to not have that control, to be delighted and to be surprised sometimes. And yeah, maybe sometimes you'll have some crappy experiences, but so what? That's part of life, right? It's not,
Yeah.
you're not always going to have the best experience. I mean, there's ups and downs. Um, there's that stoic concept too, where when your life is good, think about all the bad stuff that could happen, right? And and then when things are bad, remember that life can get better. So it's about being that in that middle zone, right, where it's being tempered. It's not getting too high on the highs and not getting too lows on the lows, but being tempered. And I think that this can lead you towards that.
Yeah. You think we can live life like, do you think we can schedule time to be spontaneous, to be, like, I mean, maybe it's an oxymoron, but like, can we schedule time to have spontaneity hours? Like, does that even make sense? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, it we have to start somewhere, and if it's a scheduling spontaneity, why not? Maybe maybe that's a baby step towards being truly spontaneous. Because if you're like us, and you're truly overscheduled and over curated, then start with spontaneity hours. Why not? And then maybe some good things will come out of that, and maybe that'll lead to some true spontaneity in your life.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it literally could be an evening where there's no plans for dinner and you just decide, hey, we're gonna just make a meal with whatever's in the kitchen or whatever. Like I don't know, like you decide like there's no screens on a given night or electronic free night and the family has to make dinner without using any electricity or a gas range. I don't know, you make it up,
Yeah,
but like there's ways that you can, I think, schedule some of that spontaneity, that kind of like, hey, have a surprise birthday party where, you're kind of in, avoiding getting into a complacent rut of rinse, lather, repeat every single day. It's another Monday, we're going to have to cook and then clean and then bedtime routine. And, you just want to mix things up a little. Like, yeah, like do something different, be spontaneous, do it this week, do it next week, schedule it if you have to your point, if your life is so busy and it's not happening organically, force it to happen. And chances are you'll have a memorable experience.
yeah, and you know what? You know who's great at spontaneity is kids. So have a family night, and you know what? Let your 6-year-old decide what the whole family's going to do, and it'll probably be really silly, but you'll probably have a great time.
There you go. Leave it to the mind of a kid to, show us how to have some joy. So no question about it. Love that. Love that. Cool, man. So you talked about a concept earlier of beta mode. What is beta mode? Maybe we talk a little bit about that because it ties, I guess, maybe a little bit to a 6-year-old mindset, but how they just let stuff fall and they iterate. But yeah, what tell us about beta mode? What were you thinking there?
Sure. So, it goes back to the concept of beta software, right? And I come from a development background. You've been in software development as well, product development. So, for those who may not know, you start out with or ideally, you start out with a minimum viability product, right? Or viable product. And what that means is you get it out to market as fast as possible, right? You build it out with the minimum amount of features that you need so that the user can have that experience, and you get it out to the public. And then you use feedback from the user to iterate on that and in small incremental steps. You could call it a beta product, right? I mean, you think about something like Gmail. Gmail came out, I don't remember the year, but Gmail was a beta product for like 10 years, right? Gmail was in beta for 10 years. And the idea was that they wanted more users to use it so that they could iterate on it as fast as possible, right? So it was a genius move by Google, and I think a lot of other software companies took that cue and got very simple software out there to users. And then once the users were able to use it, they're able to see exactly what the needs are and then build based on that. So the concept is beta mode, right? So what does it mean that if your life is in beta? That means that it's not finished. Like that it's not you're not chasing perfection. You're embracing trial and error, right? And life is a journey, and it's an ever evolving journey. So, if you consider your life in beta, then you'll embrace the uncertainty, you embrace the trial and error, and you embrace those, what we talked about, those some of those crappy experiences that you're going to have. That's fine. You have that experience, you learn from it, and it's an organic experience. You learn from it, and then it improves organically. It's not an over curated, best of like TikTok worthy or Insta worthy experience, but it's going to be organic. And I think you're going to enjoy it more because of that.
I think it's a brilliant construct to reduce fear of failure. I mean, even at the end of the day, if you really like were to go back to the earlier point of why do we over curate our lives, isn't it at the end of the day very much tied to a fear of failure, fear of making the wrong choice? And if you live life in beta mode, to your point, failure is just part of the journey. It's part of the plan. Like we're
Yep.
expected to fail, like it's a way to reduce this pressure on yourself to make the perfect decision through over curating and analyzing every piece of data that you can get your hands on to make that right decision instead of it being like there is no right decision, guys. Like life is one big experiment and we need to live it and experience it. And that should be the focus as opposed to living it and making sure we only make 100% correct decisions. Like, yeah, I don't know that that's really going to lead to happiness and fulfillment in your life. So love this concept of beta mode. I think it's just an awesome way to really reduce your fear of failure, embrace failure as
Yeah.
part of the process, and just go out and experiment.
Yeah. And that's when you learn the most, I think, is from failure, right? I mean, look, productivity gurus and, leadership gurus have been saying this for years, right? That it's the failures that make you learn the most and help you progress the most. And some of the best managers that I've had in my life have been ones who've been okay with failure as long as you learn from it, as long as you have a plan and are able to, document it and learn from it. Obviously, you don't want to make the same mistake twice, but and some of the worst managers I've had have always berated employees for failure, and I think those are situations I got out of very quickly. But it goes to show that I think those good managers I've had were good managers because they were at successful companies and they were willing to embrace failure and to protect their employees through that failure because it's clear that that's the best way to learn.
Yeah. No, I can't agree more. And I think, just as yeah, I had to Google it, man. Like Gmail came out in April of 2004. As I just said, we're not going to over curate. It was in beta mode for 5 years.
Okay,
So if
there you go.
Gmail can be in beta mode for 5 years, you can live your life in beta mode for the next month. I'm gonna tee up our No So November challenge, Chirag. I'll hand it back to you to kind of go over the details, but that's my call to action is like, hey, let's try to live our life in beta mode. Let's all pledge the No So November challenge as a way to help our listeners to live in beta mode and take a break from social media. So I know you've got a lot more background here of where you came across this and thought it was a cool idea, but let's tee it up to the audience and see if folks are up to the challenge.
Yeah, sure. So, I think I saw, ironically, I think I saw it on social media, probably on LinkedIn or something, because that's the only social media network that I'm on. So No So November is a social media challenge to not be on social media. And the proponent of that is Jonathan Haidt, who is the author of a book I read recently, which is The Righteous Mind, which actually I think you're reading right now,
Yep.
and his latest book, which is The Anxious Generation. So, I think what he's trying to get out there is that, social media is causing a lot of anxiety and mental health issues for especially Gen Z. And so I think as a result of that, he came up with this challenge, which is you can look it up as hashtag No So November. And it's about taking the month of November and pledging to not, I mean, they have different levels of how much you can pledge, but the idea is just to not be on social media so much, right? So ideally, you could be off of social media completely, but as we all know, there's various reasons why you may not be able to get off completely. But, I think if you make a modest attempt at it, I think you'll see benefits from it, right? And yeah, going back to the whole beta mode, I think this is a good way to kick off that whole beta mode. And maybe you'll find that being off of social media for 80 or 90% of the time in November will help you maybe feel less anxiety. Maybe it'll spur some spontaneous moments like we talked about earlier. And yeah, I think it's a good challenge to take on. Sinead, what do you think?
100%. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. I mean, worst thing that happens is, you miss a couple of items because you weren't able to see an update on social media. Guess what? You can plan for that. Talk to a fellow parent with your kids or in whatever the same activities. Let them know you're doing this. Spread the word about this. And guess what? Rally your network around you to help you to still be successful. That's what beta mode is all about. It allows you to iterate, try new things that are going to lead to more fulfillment. If you're stuck in a rut, try something new. This is a great way to ask for help. And maybe just through asking for that help, you build a new relationship with a new parent that reaches out, and you form a new friendship that you wouldn't have if you didn't take this challenge on. So give it a shot. If you miss an activity, if you miss an event, guess what? It's not the worst thing in the world either. It'll teach your kids to be more resilient and overcome adversity. So live in beta, no so November challenge. Let's get on it. Let's see what happens and see if it helps you live a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, great call to action. Let's live in beta mode.
Yeah, let's live in beta mode, live in the moment. I mean, listen, type A is type A. I know it's not something that's easy, that's natural to let go, but hey, let's all give it a shot. Be more mindful, be more thoughtful, and then see what happens. And then tell us what happens. Hit us up through this month, but hit us up through our feeds. Hit us up on email and let us know how it works out for you. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. I think that's the pod.
All right. Well, let's wrap there. Have a great November, and yeah, we'll chat. That's the pod. Cool.
It's the pod. And remember, keep questioning everything.
Accept this podcast.
There you go. See you next
Cheers.
time.